Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So I'm Joan Johnston. Welcome to Expo North, supporting creative communities in the Highlands and Islands and Murray region. So I, as a fashion craft and textile specialist for Expo North, I'm along here today with Tim Wright, who's our digital and crowdfunding advisor. So we're delighted to have our panel of people here today, which I'll introduce to you in a minute, who are here to discuss some of the issues around developing a sustainable business. It is such a broad topic with so many different aspects, both covering the economical and the environmental needs around it. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Abigail Hurd of KTN. And then we've also got Helen Lavery of Zero Waste Scotland. And thirdly, we've got Graham Harrison, who's the area manager of Orkney Highlands and Islands Enterprise. Unfortunately, Lynn Wilson, who was going to be here, has had to send her apologies and is not able to be here today. So just to give you a bit of an overview, really we recognise the importance of driving going forward with sustainable businesses, and as we support creative communities in the Highlands and Islands, we wanted to bring together a series of sessions which were running over 3 different dates to cover building a sustainable business. And we'll be talking to existing businesses as well, how they've developed more sustainably or started from the beginning, where they've come up with an idea that they felt is better for people and for the planet. And we will be showcasing those through the different dates later on in the end of October and also at the beginning of November. So really just to give you a bit more of an introduction to this session. So as we build a future that is more sustainable, businesses focus on developing better products, utilising local natural resources or recycling existing materials, often with a circular economy approach. Extending the life cycle of materials or repurposing can help reduce waste. We bring together those who are actively involved in creating good products that are either better for people or better for the planet. So over the next 3 webinars, we'll investigate the journey and we will talk, as I say, with different businesses about how they've developed and launched the businesses within the last 5 years. Please do ask any questions that you may have. We have a series of questions to ask our panels today, and we want a fairly relaxed discussion, but pop any questions that you might have into the chat function and we can bring that in through the rest of this discussion. So what I'd like to do really to start with is to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, their organisation, and also give us a bit of an outline of how their organisation sees sustainability and how they're dealing with it. That's quite a big question to start with. Maybe, Abby, if I could ask you to start, please.
Thanks, Joan. Yeah, so the organisation I work for is KTN, which is Knowledge Transfer Network, but we've changed our branding slightly, so we're known as KTN. And what we do is make connections, so do the networking part of innovation. So obviously relationships, working across disciplines is a really important part of bringing products to market. So we help people find collaborators, end users, other partners in their supply chain, investment, the right funding, and yeah, we'll make these introductions and help facilitate collaboration with a view to driving positive change. So positive change is kind of at the centre of our strategy as an organisation. It's kind of our core purpose. So innovation to that end, and positive change for us means like economical benefits, which is kind of like the traditional views, traditional motivation behind innovation, but also societal benefits and environmental benefits. So being sustainable is really important to KTN. So I guess that looks like supporting innovators through that process, so that there is a degree to which we're sort of conscious of that stuff ourselves, like how much we fly, etc. But like primarily it's about helping innovators think through these aspects of sustainability across different sectors and technology areas. So yeah, as an organisation, we cover everything from sort of food and drink to medical devices, photonics, sensors, robotics, yeah, a whole spectrum of technologies and sectors. Yeah, and then we've got themes that cut across like manufacturing and design, which is kind of where I sit in the organisation.
Excellent. Thank you, Abby. That's great. And Helen, if we could move on to you, please.
Thank you. So I'm Helen Lavery. I'm a partner with the not-for-profit environmental organisation Zero Waste Scotland. Zero Waste Scotland is funded by the Scottish Government, and our role is to support Scotland to use products and resources responsibly. And we don't really often talk about the term sustainability as an organisation, but everything that we do within the organisation is about changing systems, models, and behaviours in order to reduce the drivers of climate change and of biodiversity loss. So the reason that we focus on materials and products is because 80% of Scotland's carbon footprint comes from the vast amounts of goods and materials and products that we produce, we use, we consume, and then we throw away. And we often throw away these products just after one use. So this linear make, use, and then dispose approach to materials and products isn't sustainable, and it is the single greatest cause of the climate crisis, and it's an issue that we all need to address as individuals and as businesses. So at Zero Waste Scotland, we are supporting a solution for Scotland, and that's the development of a circular economy. And I'm aware that I've thrown another bit of jargon in, so we start with sustainability and then I throw in circular economy as well. So I'll introduce the concept a little bit for those that aren't sort of aware of what we mean by the circular economy. So the circular economy is a fundamental shift in the way that we manufacture, the way that we use, and the way that we view materials and products. So the aim is to reduce waste to a minimum by recovering and reusing as many products and materials as possible over and over again. And circular economy models include resource recovery, sharing economies, utilising digital technologies to track and to maximise resource use, leasing instead of buying, or companies providing products as a service so they can manage the end of life and the product's life cycle more efficiently, reuse, remanufacture, and a really important one is circular design, where products are designed for repair and in ways that ensure that products and the materials that they're made from can be used again and again. So I'm really delighted to be here today to have this conversation about wider sustainability and how circular economy fits into that conversation.
Great, thank you, Helen. In fact, actually, really to be talking about sustainability, you really need to be thinking about the circular economy, because it is about extending the life of the materials that we use, as you say. So I think, yeah, great that you brought that in at the early stage. Okay, Graham, if we could hear from you, please.
Yeah, my name is Graham Harrison. I'm the area manager for Orkney for Highlands and Islands Enterprise. We're the Scottish Government's economic and community development organisation covering the north and west of Scotland, all the bonny bits of Scotland, for a paraphrase. My day job as area manager takes me into kind of all aspects of what we do as an organisation, helping businesses to grow and to become sustainable and remain sustainable in the current difficult economic climate at the moment, but also communities, social enterprises, likewise the same. We're also involved in helping individual sectors to develop, food and drink, creative industries being two that we're particularly involved in here in Orkney, along with tourism at the moment, and energy, and certainly looking at infrastructure provision in a sustainable way. Our view on sustainability is it's not just a new term that's been invented in time for COP26. It's something that's been a part of businesses in the Highlands and Islands for many decades, albeit in different ways and with different labels attached to it. It's part of any kind of discussion that we have with business clients alongside, as part of their development or entrepreneurship, their innovation, that kind of thing. Sustainability has to be there. I mean, it's been elevated through government policy along and the transition to net zero to a much higher profile element of business, along with fair work agenda and inclusivity, and that dictates a lot of how we spend our money, certainly, and will do in the future. But we provide financial support to the businesses alongside access to advice and other services, often in partnership with other organisations, working closely with Business Gateway, which is run by the local authorities in the High area, and with organisations like Helen's, who have particular specialities in this area. So I'll leave it at that for now.
That's great, thank you. And obviously, although you're in the Orkney area, there are obviously plenty of representatives across Highlands and Islands Moray that cover the different regions as well. Yes, ours is one of 8 area offices that cover everywhere from Shetland to Argyll, and from the Western Isles over to Forres and Moray. Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. And Tim, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe some of the projects that you've overseen in terms of sustainable?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to present myself as an expert on these things. I've been involved in things. My name's Tim Wright. I'm one of the advisors at Expo North. My area of responsibility or expertise, such as it is digital and crowd economy. But interestingly, those types of models and the crowd engagement models do bleed into quite a lot of sustainability projects. So one of the projects that I was involved with was a project called we called it Transhumance Capital. So it was looking at novel ways of financing objects through their life cycle in such a way that it allowed more participants to actually enter into the use of those objects through their life cycle, and so extend their viability through that process. Because a lot of the early stage startups that are active in this space can find it difficult to participate because of the high capital requirements that are associated with a lot of their projects. So if you're trying to build a company that is, say, renting washing machines rather than allowing people or expecting people to buy them and use them in a limited way, renting them out so that people use them on demand. If you're going to provide that service, you've got to buy an awful lot of washing machines. And for a startup, that can be quite challenging. So we were looking at what we call transhumance capital, which is a novel crowd-powered way of acquiring those assets for the crowd, and in fact the companies that were actually offering them out for rent were actually leasing them from the crowd. So there's all sorts of novel interventions there. I was very struck by some of the things that Abigail was saying. You were making the point about introductions. It's an interesting challenge when you see people seeking to extend life cycles or find opportunities to work together. Making those connections is a really important thing, and it made me think of Jaw Brew, the Glasgow-based brewery that produced their hard tack beer, which is a low alcohol beer which is brewed using returned no-use bread rolls from Old's Bakery. Now, whilst they're both in the food and drink sector, making that connection of seeing that use or unsold bread could be useful in the process of making beer is quite a leap. And I don't know, does KTN, you were talking very much about making connections there, is that something that you would consider if a company came to you that had what they regarded as a waste product? Would you be the sort of organization you could come to see if there was a partner that might be able to make use of that and extend its life a little?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we would be able to look at. So that idea of using waste products from other companies, like I think people refer to it as industrial symbiosis sometimes, is a really interesting concept. So yeah, we could help make those connections. I'm sure Zero Waste Scotland could also do something really similar within Scotland. I think there might actually be a database somewhere that helps people do that sort of thing. But yeah, that's something that we could help with. So we could, if somebody had something specific or an idea of how it might be able to be used, we could reach out to our network or get in touch with specific people. It is actually something that does occasionally come up. The other thing that we could help do around that is help look at different sources of funding to support that if people were trying to do something new or innovative with a particular material, especially where there's risk involved, where there's not certainty about how that might pan out or exactly what the process looks like, we could help people find the right funding to support that process. I think, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'm guessing that you're also interested in helping organizations that are finding opportunities through sustainability. So not just organizations that want to bring sustainability into their own businesses, but people that see opportunities to start a new business that assists others to become more sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the end of the spectrum that we sit at. So people who want to start a business and want to, or I've already got a business but want to do something new. So occasionally we will look at like internal processes and people trying to do something innovative internally, but more often than not, it's about a new product or a new service or a new business model. Often our activity will be around specific challenges that are kind of posed by government and filtered down through strategy, but there's also opportunity for sort of bottom-up ideas as well. So if people have got an idea that doesn't fit with current strategy, there's room to sort of accommodate those within the network and make the right connections. I think you're right about the connections being particularly important in this area. I think often these sustainability challenges, whether it's to do with materials or circular economy or just even emissions, like it's very rarely does the problem cost and the problem benefit belong to one individual. It's often much more joined up and interconnected. So to reach a solution, collaboration is really key.
Very much so, I guess, in the circular economy space, where you're looking to carry things through from, you know, the item from production through the usage through to disposal. That, you know, making those connections between partners must be key. I guess, Helen, you must do an awful lot in that space.
Yes, we do. And actually, my role focuses on the Highlands and Islands and wider rural Scotland. And that collaboration bit is key to making these models work in a rural economy. And it's much wider than just looking at your immediate supply chain or businesses working within your own sector. You've got to look much more widely. So we're really encouraging cross-sector collaboration, but then also collaboration between the public sector, the private sector, and communities in the rural setting to ensure that we can keep materials and products within the local value chain for as long as possible, and creating models and mechanisms to keep them as high up the value chain as possible for as long as possible as well.
And that is, sorry, Joan, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, didn't I? But I was just thinking that's a really important aspect of sustainability, isn't it? Building sustainable ecosystems particularly for smaller firms, and certainly in the rural context. That's an important aspect of sustainability that perhaps wouldn't automatically be thought of as a key part of the sustainability agenda.
Yeah, I was just really going to add from what Helen was said there. Obviously, with the impact of what's happened in the last 2 years in terms of supply chain, the pandemic, and people are now looking more local for resources and what they can use, which is fantastic, because obviously we're all about supporting local manufacturing, but also using our local natural resources as much as we can. So I guess that leads on to the question is, you know, what are you seeing are those current challenges for businesses who are trying to become more sustainable? You know, what are the people that the projects that you're seeing happening? What are those challenges now?
Well, I'll pick that up.
You can go, Abby. Yep.
So yeah, I guess there's like a number of things from an innovation point of view. So one of them would be the financing around moving to more sustainable models. So often that involves a shift from selling products directly to selling products as a service, which means you're not getting a sort of spike in revenue as you sell a product as a one-off. So you've got a longer sort of return on your investment into that manufacturing process or into setting up that service. So different types of financing are required, and financing partners that understand the risks involved and the mechanisms of that process. I think for doing things internally within an organisation, as well as doing things that are sort of for a market outside your organisation, the inertia of current systems is always going to be an issue. So getting people to change and move away from what they've got, what they've invested in previously, can be a challenge, and is something that really, I guess, on one hand, it just takes time, but then increasingly these disruptive technologies are becoming so compelling or so cost effective that they are just doing exactly that, disrupting the marketplace and sort of forcing change. Yeah, so I guess those two things, the inertia and the finance. But I think the things like the pandemic and changing the way we've worked have kind of opened doors of opportunity, so people are more open to thinking differently. And I think this is a good time to be making a move if you've been waiting to go with pushing sustainability.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because with one thing that COVID did demonstrate was the vulnerability of supply chain. So looking at alternatives that are maybe more robust is certainly front of mind for a lot of organizations. I was reading the Accenture report the other day about it was said something along the lines that 73% of chief executives were wanting to move their business in a sustainable direction. So I'm guessing that it's as an Accenture report, it was probably larger types of organizations. Do you think it's more challenging, or do you think it's easier for SMEs to get involved? Are they coming to the party wanting to do this type of thing, or is the emphasis still more on larger businesses, do you think?
I think there's lots of opportunity for smaller businesses to be really disruptive, so they're more agile if they've not got that inertia of sort of existing processes and infrastructure that they need to change. So while small changes in a big business can have massive impact, the ability to be flexible and agile and do something really disruptive, I think, is much more available to smaller companies.
Yeah, sorry. I can add, I mean, my answer to that would be maybe aye, maybe no. It depends on how they've come through the pandemic, you know, and that varies across sectors and across different types and sizes of businesses. There are obviously have been a number of challenges and are still ongoing challenges regarding kind of finances for some businesses, but availability of labour, another, and the recent supply chain disruption that we've seen as well. So those challenges are often exaggerated when you get at the end of a long logistics line in an island or a remote rural location. So we're used to dealing with these issues. I think other things, how consumers have come through the pandemic is a big thing as well. We've seen research that says that probably 3/4 of consumers would like to make a greener, a more sustainable choice when they're buying, but there is a limit to that because there's a price ceiling above which they're not prepared to go, given the other pressures on their budgets with fuel costs and other food rises, cost rises. So it is a challenging environment, but there are, you know, niche opportunities certainly for the fleet of foot, and if they've come through the pandemic with a bit of spare cash, if you're in that kind of lucky situation, then you may be able to take advantage of it. There are issues, you know, there's only so much small businesses can do if you're reliant on a kind of stretched supply chain where your suppliers or your transport providers may not be in a position to move as quickly to a sustainable model as yourselves. So you're only as good as your weakest link. So I think there's a number of issues there to ponder. But I'm optimistic that, particularly given the focus that's been put on greener issues and more sustainable products, there are lots of opportunities for innovative businesses to get into that space.
I guess.
Sorry, John, I was just going to jump in there, and I think probably important for the audience to understand that we're not, you know, to become sustainable, to become circular, it's not all about creating new shiny things or shifting your model from selling a product to leasing it or renting it to your customer. There's a huge range of different sort of mechanisms and things that you can do within your business in order to create a more circular approach to what you're doing. And I think what we find is people get overwhelmed by the number of phrases out there, like low carbon, net zero, and even the term of sustainability. It depends what you're looking to sustain, to what it means to you as an individual, what it means to you as a business. And I think people get overwhelmed and they don't know where to start in terms of their journey. And actually a really easy place to start, especially at the moment in terms of rising energy costs, is looking at your internal energy efficiencies. And we've got our energy efficiency business support service in Zero Waste Scotland. So businesses can get a free energy audit, and that often shows immediate savings that businesses can implement. So it's not just about the environment, it's about saving money as well and improving internal efficiencies. And there's also a 0% interest loan attached to that, and some generous cashback incentives as well. So that's a really easy place for businesses to start. The support's out there to help them on that journey. The challenge that we encourage businesses to look at is that material flow and product flow. So even in simple terms, just looking at where your material's coming from, how are you using them within the business, and really important, what happens to them at that end of life. And these present, big opportunities for businesses. So it can, alongside being good for the environment, it can save money, it can build brand affinity with customers, it can provide you with a competitive advantage. And what we've seen over the last 18 months is that it can provide resilience against external supply chain fluctuations. So actually, you've got more control over where your materials are coming from, and you can cycle that as well. So you're not coming up against some of the issues, the global issues in terms of supply chains. So I think breaking down some of the language and those immediate steps that businesses can take, and making sure that people understand it's not all about huge investments, it's not about creating a new product, it's not about completely changing your business models. There's simple steps that businesses can take in order to reduce their environmental impact, and often those can have cost savings and real positive opportunities for businesses as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think actually, reflecting on that concept of lengthening the time that a product is used is actually going, the research shows that obviously it's reducing waste, it's all of those things. And you can see that there's a growing need for pre-loved peer-to-peer consumerism trends are happening out there, and that whole idea of adopting the principles of renting, or it's just different thinking. But ultimately this comes down to the consumer and how we can also, with education and information, support them in that journey, that they don't need to go out and buy something new, that they can think differently. There's rental sites now for going camping for your 2 weeks in the summer that you're only going to use for those 2 weeks. Let's rent the gear that we need rather than buying it and storing it. And particularly, obviously, there's storage issues as well, as because people are living in smaller places, all of those things. So it is also, we can all drive these things, but ultimately we've got to bring the consumers, the everyday person on the street with us on this journey.
Joan, that's a really interesting point in that some of this is about changing consumers' mindset to the acceptability of different approaches. And with your experience in the fashion sector, how do you think that has changed? So the appetite for or acceptability for renting or taking second-hand clothing and this type of approach, it seems to have changed. What do you think's moved it? Do you think it was influencers? Do you think it was something from the within the industry itself, or do you think it's just wider societal things that gradually bled through and the industry's responded to it?
I think it's coming from a number of different places, but ultimately the younger generation coming through value their future and see that happening. So you've got different mindsets there. You've got those conscious consumers who are recognizing the wastage in fast fashion particularly, and so therefore they are often the key users of the rental model, and also people living in cities who are going out a lot more are looking at those, so you can see that happening. But also, you know, the mature customers as well recognize quality, and they adopt more of the buy better and buy less, which also makes sense. So, you know, those they tend to sit within in that area. So yeah, it is coming from a range of different places, but I think, you know, what's happened in the last couple of years will really have impact. Look, our high street is totally decimated, is totally different, and we need to think of new ways to for people to be able to wear different clothing, but do it differently, but also extend the life. It really is about extending the life of the products. Good.
Yeah, all good. And there is, of course, as has already been alluded to, some proper bottom line advantages here. I wonder, Helen, most of the people that are approaching zero waste, are they coming at it from a motivation more for the sustainability agenda, or are they coming at it from the point of view of seeing a way of extending margins and making a difference on the bottom line, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of both, and often they go hand in hand. And obviously, you know, we're dealing with businesses, so they've got to generate profit, and so that is always going to be a driver. But I think I touched on some of those benefits. You know, some of these models can extend your relationship and the length of the relationship with a customer over a period of time. It can build trust, and I think we've touched on it, that people are looking, they want to know what is the impact of this product that I am buying. Is it going to last, and what's going to happen to it when I no longer use or want it, and is there a solution, and is the manufacturer actually taking responsibility for this solution as well? And people are becoming a lot more aware and a lot more conscious of that. And that's being followed by legislation as well. And we've got legislation coming in around extended producer responsibility, which is going to force manufacturers to think about the end of life of their products as well. So I think they sort of go hand in hand, but I think a lot of the organisations and businesses that we deal with, their environmental impact, the sustainability aspects are a key driver for them as well. But how do you actually make a profitable business out of them? It goes hand in hand.
So for anyone that's sitting with a business that has, I mean, obviously the sustainable goals, they have been around for a long time. We all know with the direction that we're trying to move in. What sort of recommendations are you making now to help businesses address those issues that may not already have done so? Helen, are there any tools or support out there through Zero Waste Scotland that can help support that?
Yeah, so a big part of what we do is beginning that initial conversation with businesses about how some of the circular economy models might be relevant to them and might be opportunities for them as well. So we run quite regular Kickstarter workshops, so that introduces the concept of the circular economy, and we use different models to do that, and showcase what's already happening in Scotland and what's happening international, how other people are already changing their models. And then we go through a worksheet with the business to identify, well, using these models, what does that mean for my business, and how can I build some of this into my operations and create a bit of an action plan around that as well. For businesses that have got a bit more of a specific idea that's a bit more developed in terms of the circular economy, we have got our circular economy business support service. So that's one-to-one consultancy support that we can put into a business to help develop an idea. So that could be looking at market assessments, or it could be right up to later stages of looking to launch a product or a service as well. And it's really quite flexible in what that can support. We also have our Circular Economy Investment Fund. So that's a really quite large scale projects that are looking at significant carbon savings. So that's £50,000 to £1 million. And it's for this year, we're focusing on businesses that are working within the construction, the energy, and the bioeconomy and food systems area in terms of our investment fund as well. we are always happy to have a conversation with someone, and I'm more than happy if you're based in the Highlands and Islands or Moray, and please get in touch and we can have a chat about how we might be able to support. We've also got a huge range of resources on our website for individuals and for businesses, covering a huge range of sectors as well. So it's worth having a look on our site as well as a first stop of call in terms of how does this impact my business and what can I be doing.
Great, thank you. And Abigail, what about KTN? What sort of resources and support is there?
Yeah, so we're definitely on the innovation side of things. So rather than sort of business as usual and improvement of internal processes, we will provide support with companies that are looking to do something risky. So whether that's a small business looking to disrupt the marketplace or try and bring a new product to market, or a big firm trying to do something really, really exciting and looking for investment around that, we'd help the full spectrum of businesses. So I guess across all our competitions, sustainability is an increasingly important aspect. So people that are looking to do something to extend product life cycle or have a model for keeping materials in use for longer, or use products or chemicals that are less toxic or whatever. These things are all really key to what we're looking for. So we've got competitions that are quite generic, things like Women in Innovation, so open to any female founders or co-founders, which would be like a 50k grant, but mostly about the mentorship and the connections and support to help bring a product to market, and the profile that's sort of been part of that program brings. There's other competitions like Young Innovators that are for people under 30 with any sort of idea at all that would help somebody in those sort of early stages of building their company. That's a £10,000 grant, but it's all that competition again is more about the profile building, the support, the networking, the connections. Then we've got a number of other competitions. So we've actually just launched a circular economy competition for SMEs. So yeah, that the remit of that is pretty broad. It involves working with one of 5 circular economy centres. One of them is relates to textiles. The other ones are sort of more engineering oriented, but yeah, some interesting themes around circular economy there. There's a sustainable manufacturing call coming out soon that is probably more geared towards larger firms, although there is a requirement that there's an SME partner in those projects. We run programs like Smart Sustainable Plastic Packaging for anybody that's got an idea about how to make plastic packaging more sustainable. We've got loads of firms that have gone from just having an idea, somebody sitting at the kitchen table having an idea, to a business that's out there. They've worked their way through that program. There's some really exciting companies involved in that. And we've got a collection of people. So I sit in our design team. I help businesses think about design, but we've got people within KTN that specialise in sustainable manufacturing, plastics, sustainable aviation fuel, net zero. So we've got different people that will be aware of very specific types of funding depending on which sector or technology area people are in. But there's loads of opportunities around there, out there just now for people that are working in this area.
Fantastic, that's great. And obviously that's all available, I assume, on your website. If people sign up to the newsletter, they'll get links to that. The other one around innovation is Innovate UK obviously have constantly got funds or grants that people can apply for under different criteria. So for anyone who's got an innovative idea, recommend that you look at the Innovate UK website also, because that is UK-wide government support for innovation. Graham, what about HI? What would you say in terms of support?
Yeah, well, it's in terms of general support, I mean, we still have our own individual budgets at area level to apply according to local business and community priorities. So that flexibility is still there to tailor support to whatever an individual business needs. On top of that, we've got lots of resources online and referral services to other specialists, including Helen, and KTN, amongst others, Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service being another that we use quite a lot. So there are various routes there. I would say, and we're in the process of evolving how we deal with clients. We're going to a much more digital model as well, through something called My High, and as part of the service that will be accessible to clients through that, there is a net zero ladder, as we call it, which will, through a series of questions, allow businesses to assess where they are on a journey towards net zero or greater sustainability, and then we can look individually with businesses that we're engaged with at how they can implement changes that take them further along that route and up the ladder towards net zero sustainability. I would say COVID has changed the way support is delivered to businesses, in particular in Scotland. We're seeing a lot more calls from government or funds, ring-fence funds being announced and delivered through a variety of agencies, ourselves, Scottish Enterprise and South of Scotland Enterprise, but also Visit Scotland, Orkney Food and Drink, all have funds available, and indeed some private contractors delivering funds on behalf of government. So some examples of that, there's some COVID consequentials funds that have been ring-fenced for certain sectors, tourism in particular, which have been hardest hit by the pandemic, but also a Green Jobs Fund that government has started dispersing and will do for a number of years, I think. That's aimed at businesses that will create specifically jobs related to greener processes or changing their existing manufacturing processes to greener methods. So, but that there's some quite substantial funding coming through, hopefully, for that. But that will come with strings attached. You'll have to sign up to see various imperatives that the government want to see, like the whole Fair Work agenda, basically, and inclusive growth, paying your all your staff at the real living wage being the main factor, which is not always easy in a kind of remote, rural, or a kind of early stage development of a company. Other than that, I think all the advisory services that we can access, there's a new net zero focus section on our website that people would want to look at, and various links through that then to case studies on what we're calling net zero heroes in the run up to COP26. There's lots of case studies appearing regularly now on our social media and website, and links to other organisations. I quite like within Helen's organisation the Green Network for Businesses, which as well as including lists of companies across quite close to where you are, possibly, that are adopting sustainability practices. That there's a chance to visit some of them, at least, anyway. One example being a brewery in my neck of the woods that's adopting practices I don't think can visit yet, but these kind of things, you see how they're adopting methods to reduce resource use in particular. But no, I think we will still deal with clients face to face when we're allowed to post COVID, and work more intensively with ones who are in a growth spurt, or have a particular new strand that they want to develop. Aside from that, we are supporting, particularly here in Orkney, a number of cutting edge innovations in the energy field, which we're always looking for new applications for. That includes use of green hydrogen in businesses and things, and even more traditional sectors like the Harris Tweed. I'm aware of colleagues working with them to try and make their production much more sustainable than it's been over the last 100 years or more.
Great. I mean, there is actually a lot of help out there, which is fantastic. And one of the things we want to do at Expo North is build links to these resources on through our website. So we'll be gathering that over the next week or so, and we'll have a post up with these links.
I would add, Joan, that it's with perhaps because of COP, it's become a growth industry. The whole we can advise you on net zero industry, and there's so many offers out there. It's difficult for individual companies or businesses to assess what's most appropriate for them. I haven't seen so much of this activity since the millennium bug, so that tells you how long in the tooth I am. I think part of it, there are links to some tools in our website that are government approved, if you like. So I mean, it might well be that before you pay for somebody to tell you something you already know, that you should check out some of the more reputable ones, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, anything like that. So again, we could put a link up through Expo North to the highest links on that as well.
Net zero section, yeah.
That'd be great.
Joan,
actually, conscious of time.
I don't know whether you noticed somebody dropped a comment into the chat, quite rightly pointing out interface as being another place that you can go to. So if you're looking to do some development where you want to hook up with academic expertise in developing something, interface is a good place to go. So
indeed, and there are various levels of grants that you can access to help take forward ideas with academics. Yeah.
Great. Just conscious of the time, if anybody else wants to pop any questions into the chat, please do so. Abby, I'd just like to go back to you. You mentioned the Design Innovation Network in a link with previously. I was just wondering, is that something you want to talk about at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Joan. I'd love the chance to talk about that. So we've just launched the Design Innovation Network. So it's an innovation network within KTN's sort of broader activity, working across the innovation community, so all different types of tech development in all different sectors. And what we're trying to do is encourage innovators to think about design earlier in the process. So rather than spending your Innovate grant, getting to the end of the project and having a beautiful technology that nobody wants to use and it's put away in a cupboard, how can we get people to think about design earlier on? So lots of that's about thinking about the user, about thinking about the manufacturing process, the other infrastructure and systems that your product's got or your technology's got to fit with, but also thinking about sustainability and the impact that's got on the environment, things like right to repair, the life cycle of your product, etc. So getting people to think about these bigger issues as rather than being sort of really super focused on their technology. So the idea is that we'll get people together to look at specific challenges that are relevant to different sectors, or things like right to repair or circular economy, and we'll make connections between people developing the technology and people that are either designers as their job title, or people that have got like a designerly approach to things, i.e. they think outside the box and bring fresh perspectives to sort of tricky problems. That's the idea.
That sounds like a really good resource.
It's an interesting one. I can't help but jump in there, Joan. I apologize, but it just has all of the echoes of the advantages of crowdfunding, in as much as you don't bring a fully formed object to the crowd. You are co-creating with them and finding partners and logistical support all at the same time as raising finance. So that notion of putting a product in front of its potential user group earlier on, so that you can shape their wants and needs into the final product, is very much central to the proposition of crowdfunding approaches. So couldn't help myself. I had to mention that.
Absolutely. Well, we've only got 10 minutes left, and I was just wondering if there are any particular projects that you've looked at or more recently you think are leading the way. I mean, it's such a broad area. It would just be great to get an example of maybe particular projects that you're aware of that are particularly strong in terms of sustainability and innovation.
Yeah, there's so many different projects at different scales. So yeah, like on the larger scale, the more complex side of things like a sustainable aviation fuel program. So we've developed sustainable aviation fuel we've not done it personally, but through like people we've brought together, we've been able to do that. So that basically means rather than sustainable the aviation fuel coming from oil, it comes from waste products. So yeah, like food waste, agricultural waste, like we've been able to develop these aviation fuels. And I think some of the flights that are coming to COP26 are fuels with that aviation fuel. So at one end of the scale, there's sort of like big, exciting innovation that's been quite a risky process. And then at the other end of the scale, there's things like the packaging in supermarkets and refillable containers and that sort of business model that's came through the Smart Sustainable Plastic Packaging Challenge. And then there's other projects that we've worked on with Zero Waste Scotland, where we've looked at like things like plant pots and like how plant pots are manufactured, that have been really interesting. So yeah, lots of different projects at different scales.
Great. It's wonderful here. I mean, you know, we have to move forward, we have to innovate, we have to think differently, and it's, you know, it's just great to hear about what is going on, and we will have some examples of those on the 29th of October when we have our next webinar, where we have done recordings with a number of innovative companies who are driving and making product that have sustainable credentials. Helen, can I go back to you on this? We've only got a few minutes. So is there anything particular that you, or any projects that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so a few good examples when we're talking about taking control of the end of life of your product. So there's Graceful Changes in Edinburgh, and they are an ethical and environmentally conscious kids clothing company. So they offer bundles of kids clothing on a subscription basis. So parents can rent clothes for babies and for children instead of buying, and subscribers get to choose a package of clothes, and they can be exchanged as the child grows up, and for special occasions and for changing seasons as well. And I just think that's as a parent myself, it's a fab idea, because I know you get overrun with children's clothes as well. And even when you're borrowing or from family as well, often the seasons don't match up in terms of borrowing clothes from family and friends. We supported a project with Prickly Thistle, a Highlands textiles company last year, and they've developed a reusable face mask that is filtration and face fit tested, and they offer it on a subscription basis. And I think that's a great idea, considering I think we've all seen single-use face masks littered in the streets and even in more rural areas over the last 18 months. So it's a fantastic idea. So that's the idea, is that they get the materials back at the end of life, and then they can use it to create something else. And then another really good one in the sort of the creative industry space is the Circular Arts Network in Edinburgh. And they are an online sharing platform which allows artists, technicians and theatre makers and craftspeople to share materials. So it's been designed as a go-to location that helps people in the arts to reuse and recycle easily. And it's also open up to other sectors, allowing them to recycle excess materials and make them available to people within the arts field. So anyone can register their items, and the Circular Arts Network will then help find the items a new home. And it's a really good example of a sharing model in action, creating a longer life for products and materials, and reducing waste streams as well. So those were three that I wanted to touch on.
That's excellent, really good, thank you. And Graham, anything particular that you'd like to?
Yeah, well, I'd say there's numerous examples over throughout the Highlands and Islands. There are a few appearing on our website. One that's not there, but I'm a personal kind of experience of is our designer-led jewellery sector here in Orkney, where various innovations have happened over the years, introducing CAD design and 3D printing, etc., to reduce the wastage on the making of prototypes ahead of the actual jewellery making process. Sourcing gold in Scotland instead of from overseas, another innovation that one company in particular is pursuing. Elsewhere, a company called Renewable Parts, which you would think the wind turbine industry would be very green, but the actual supply chain is definitely brown. and they are kind of taking the parts from turbines that are either being replaced with bigger ones or whatever, and refurbishing them for future use again. So things like that. On a bigger scale, the possible production of green aluminium at Fort William in the smelter there, as opposed to heavy industry type things there. Lots of stuff on the energy side here in Orkney that's finding uses for green electricity and green hydrogen, which we're now producing here and using it in small business applications, particularly distilling and things like that, instead of more traditional oil transport. Abby mentioned the sustainable aviation fuels. We've got a test facility here for aviation, testing a variety of low carbon powered airplanes and drones, and also that dovetails with what we're doing in the sea with wave and tidal power, which are a very small company that I was involved in helping 15 years ago now produces the biggest tidal turbine in the world, and it's floating off Orkney at the moment, producing power for a third of our homes. So that there's lots of stuff going on, which even if it starts small, it could become big in time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's where these ideas come from. It can be an idea at the kitchen table. It can be, an idea within a company. It's, we've got to encourage as much innovative thinking, but driving towards sustainable goals, because we've just got to do it. And obviously now with COP26 in the pipeline and not long off, there'll be a lot more content, I'm sure, a lot more drive and push on that in the public space going forward. Tim, is there anything you'd like to add just as we finish off?
Oh, well, Al, in terms of examples, I suppose, little things like Repair Day on the 16th of this month, I think is a great reminder and part of a bigger project to make things repairable and encouraging us to do it. Very excited around some of the things around blockchain and crypto that are good at tracking provenance and life cycle, and crypto bonds for building, more inclusivity into civic assets. But as an inveterate skip diver, it's even little things like the Glasgow Wood Recycling Centre that means that I can go and get some timber and reuse it. That just those straightforward, simple things that make my heart sing.
Excellent. Well, if it's any consolation, we built a shed from reclaimed wood and various bits of pieces acquired. So not all, we did have to purchase some, but it was our intent to see what we could build from reused rather than new sources.
Well done, you.
Yeah. It can be done. It just takes a little bit of work.
It does, yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the first of our webinar, and I'd really like to thank our guests, Abigail and Graham. That's really been great today, and Tim also for joining us on this. It's such a broad subject, and there's so much out there. There's a lot of resources. As I say, we will follow up with a page on the Expo North website linking some of these resources so that people can go to different places to find out about support. There is a lot out there, and certainly I'd like to thank you for your input today. Lastly, just to say that there are two other dates planned for this series, so the 29th of October at 11 and the 5th of November as well. So if you stay connected with Expo North, you'll find out more detail about those then. But thanks again, and yes, all the best for the future. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks.
Okay.
See you all again.
Thank you.